You only have one life to live, so get the most out of it. On Good Life, Great Life, join me, Brian Highfield, and my guests as we share success stories, habits, mindsets, and lessons learned by successful people. These lessons are not taught in schools, but are critical for getting ahead in life. Whether you want a successful business or career, optimal health, or a lifestyle that most people just dream of, Good Life, Great Life has you covered. After retiring from a successful corporate career in my 40s, I founded multi-million-dollar businesses in the sports and healthcare arenas. Now, I help everyday people maximize their lives and speak regularly at seminars, on podcasts, and radio shows to share principles on the topics of health, wealth, and happiness. Don't let a good life get in the way of a great life. Join me today on Good Life, Great Life. All right, well, welcome to another episode of Good Life, Great Life. So today we have with us Maureen Edwards, the founder of 8 Simple Steps. Welcome to the program, Maureen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Well, we want to get to know you a little bit. So give us a little bit about your background and the inspiration for creating 8 Simple Steps.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll go back just a little bit. I always say to people, I never expected to become an entrepreneur. I was always a corporate girl all the way, loved being in corporate America. But it wasn't until I had an aha moment where I accidentally invented and patented a product and said goodbye to corporate, leveraged everything, and commercialized my very first product in the pet industry, and then created a second product in that industry. But it was tough going. I think that we have these ideas of entrepreneurship that it's all going to be sunshine and lollipops. And we think as successful as we were in corporate, it's going to be just that easy in entrepreneurship. And anybody who's done it could say it's a rude awakening. And after leveraging everything, Brian, my home, my 401k, my kids' college education, I almost lost absolutely all of it because I didn't put the processes in place the right way. I didn't seek out help the way I should have. And now I literally am on a mission to make sure that businesses don't run into the same problem I did. They don't make the same mistakes that I did. And it's really to impact at least one small business owner a day, whether directly working with me or right here and now talking with you indirectly, to give them some type of resources, tips, best practices so they can survive and thrive. And that's what 8 Simple Steps does now. And this is my 6th company. So when I say that, I wasn't an entrepreneur, well, I guess I am now because I totally embody and embrace it. I'm not anything else anymore. No more corporate.
Yeah, so a lot of us have been there, right? Because we always, we all follow what we're told to go to school, get a good job, and have a career. And most people end up staying in corporate America for 40 years plus, and until they decide to retire. But most people get that entrepreneurial bug and want to do something different, but they don't know where to start. So if someone's thinking about starting a small business, what's the advice right out of the gate that you would give them?
Keep your day job. So keep your day job and start investigating what you would like to do, who you would like to serve. Really do some, introspective stuff about your talents and what your passion is, and take some time to be very thoughtful with a lot of due diligence. So while you're working for somebody else and paying the bills, you can start preparing for an exit plan, if you want to call it, behind the scenes. But make sure you put all the pieces in place before you take the leap.
Yeah, and we've seen that where people, they do take the leap. They just go all in, quit their job and go in, and it's kind of do or die. They're kind of burning their ships, so to speak, and we're forced to make it work, which is a risky tactic, as you point out. But if you can start your side gig, build your business while you're still earning a paycheck. I think that's really good advice.
I wish that what's funny is when I started my first company, I did all the due diligence for an entire year. I was going to conventions and, PTA meetings and doing like consignment and really testing my marketplace. And even with all of that, Brian, it still was a risk and it still was hard. But there has to come a time where you say, I got to go all in now. I couldn't continue another year of doing PTA meetings and selling product that way. I had done the market research. At some point, you have to say, I'm either going to do this or I'm going to stay put.
Yeah, yeah. So where did simple steps? I'm assuming there's 8 simple things out there. Can you kind of just hit on those a little bit? What are those key steps that people need to understand?
Well, it's funny that I named my company 8 Simple Steps, and it was based on the principle of the goldfish syndrome. I don't know. Have you ever heard of the goldfish syndrome?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. So goldfish have the attention span of 9 seconds. People have the attention span today of 8 seconds, which tells us that you only have literally nanoseconds to be able to reach somebody, make an influence on them, acquire them, and retain them. We have too much content coming from us from too many different places, and it's just very hard to sort it out. So I came up with a process that said, let's simplify how you build a business. Let's simplify how you market out there. Let's simplify the branding structure. And so my entire program is created so that it's clear, it's concise, it's consistent, compelling, and it's customer centric. It follows those 5 C's, and I teach all of my courses in 8 simple steps. And that's it. So it's easy to digest, it's easy to comprehend, and most importantly, it's easy to implement.
Awesome. So what's kind of where do you get people started when if they join your program, they're thinking about starting a business, where do you get them started right from the get-go?
So I created a proprietary blueprint many years ago that I had been using, whether I was brought in to turn around a company or start a new company, help one scale, it didn't matter. The very first step for any business out there, whether you work with me or anybody, is please build your brand before you build your business. And so I created the Value Accelerator for people to understand that if you're having trouble with marketing or you skip to marketing before brand, converting customers is a really heavy, heavy lift. And if you're not converting right now, I want you to take a step back and go through 5 specific things. 1, validate your audience. Like, who is your target audience? Who are you supposed to be serving? And make it really niched. Like, don't make it super broad. Don't have every generation in there. There's no way. If you serve everybody, Brian, serve nobody. So the first step is really know who you're going to be making a difference in people's lives. And then the next one is, what is your value prop? If marketing does not know the real solutions you provide, the real outcome, the way you can really change people's lives, it doesn't really have anything to work with. And competitive differentiators, like 5 million new businesses were created last year, the most in history. So people have a lot of people on the left and the right of them that they're competing for the same target group. And then I say industry positioning. How are you going to position your product out there? And then pull it all together. And the 5th one is messaging. And this is so important. Once you've nailed all of that other stuff, you've got to pull it together and give marketing the opportunity to use something. So if you haven't gone through all of that, then you're kind of stuck. And that's where I start people right from the very, very beginning, as we build your brand. And for those who have already built it and aren't converting, we go back to the basics and start dissecting where there are gaps. So that would be my recommendation for anybody out there.
Yeah, because a lot of people haven't put that much thought into it. They just focus on their product and think that anyone out there is will buy it and don't get real specific on who they're targeting, who their target market really is, and it exists for no matter what your product or your service, there is a target you should shoot for, right?
There is, and I know people get excited about their product and what they're doing, and they should be super excited. But believe it or not, there is not one product for every single person out there. And let's just say, Brian, there is. Okay, let's say you came out with something that every single person can use. Can you really handle reaching Gen Z, the 18-year-olds, all the way to the 65-year-olds when they're all getting their information from different places, different platforms, they comprehend it differently, they learn differently, they buy differently? You're going to drive yourself insane. and you're going to spin your wheels. You're going to get nowhere. And so I say to people, if a boomer loves it that much and they find out about it, they'll buy it. But you don't have to target them if really the people who need it and you can focus in on are millennials.
What are some of the other pitfalls that people fall into when they're starting a business, even if things are going well for a while? What are some of the mistakes that are pretty common that you've seen?
I think the biggest one that I see that people fall into is that they love their prospects more than they love their customers. So we spend a lot of time and a lot of money prospecting and chasing and trying to acquire customers. And it takes about 3 to 10 times more money to do it, not to mention time. But if we just took a step back and we said, I've got 100 customers here and I just focus on 10 of them, just 10% for them to buy one more service or one more product, we would double our revenue. And the amazing thing about this is that we spend 98% of our marketing budget out there on prospecting and acquiring new customers. So I say to people, you have people who have raised your hand. They've already told you they love you. They trust you. They bought from you. They're advocating from you, and you're ignoring them. So my suggestion really for anybody out there, and especially as we go into a recession and economic slowdown, is regroup and really look at who loves you and love them back.
I think it's pretty interesting because you're right. I think most people, they have 100% focus on prospecting and looking for their next customer instead of loving upon the customers they already have and possibly upselling or cross-selling to them.
Exactly. And upselling and cross-selling is so easy to do, and you're actually serving your customers really well. And I'll give this example and I'll say to people, all right, so let's say you're a web designer and somebody comes to you and asks you to build a website. It's in your best interest to also share with them how you can manage it or sell them an SEO package. Don't just be one and done with the website and let them go. Wouldn't it be for them in their best interest to keep you building their business with them? And that's how we need to think, is that it's not like you're selling and selling. No, you're serving them and helping them.
What are some other areas that you find that business owners just need help with? So you talked a lot about the marketing aspect of it, but what are the aspects of the business that people really struggle with?
Pricing. And
Pricing.
I will raise my hand right here and say my biggest problem with my first company is I didn't have my pricing right. And if you are not pricing to cover your overhead, to pay yourself a salary, to put profit in the bank, like something to either scale later, or we think of COVID, nobody even had enough money for 6 weeks of rent. We talk about that. If you're not covering all of that, you're going to have a really tough time, if a time at all, to be sustainable. And it happened to me. So it's a real passion of mine to make sure when I work with entrepreneurs that they get their pricing right, that we do a really deep dive. What is it costing you to run this business? So what are you going to charge just to cover your bills? And haven't you noticed how many people do not take a paycheck? They leave a job to become an entrepreneur and they don't take any money for themselves. And I'll raise my hand, everybody. I did the exact same thing. I started my business, didn't take a paycheck, said, oh, I'm going to put it all back in the business. And at that point, you're just so far deep into the rabbit hole that if your pricing isn't right, you're not going to be in business.
Yeah, that's a big one. And I'm sure a lot of people are probably, I don't know. I've seen it both ways where they're overpricing and underpricing, and overpricing is just as bad, right? Because you're not getting as many customers. So your revenue is suffering. And then underpricing yourself, you could be making a lot more in that. So I guess I've seen it both ways, where pricing is just too far one way or the other, and it's just not right.
There is a strategy behind it, and there are like 10 different pricing strategies out there now. It isn't always just, let me charge what I can for my cover my overhead, or, that sort of thing in that typical traditional cost analysis. But no, there's so many different ways you can price your services today, either by the hour or by the project or a retainer. Products themselves, value-based pricing is huge. And so I say to people, investigate what is best for you. but make sure you're not in the red before you ever launch your company. And if you are right now, you need to do some deep analysis as to where the holes are and how to get out of it. But you're right, some are too high and some are way too low. That makes them look like, I always say, never go to be the cheapest, because then it just makes you look like you're a cheap brand. And at the end of the day, those are the type of customers who you will attract, are those who don't want to pay you what you're worth.
Excellent point. Now, do you offer any tax strategy advice, or anybody getting structured from their tax?
I do not. I have a team of people, though, that I certainly can recommend, who are great business accountants out there, especially geared to small business owners, because they're in a very special group, let's call it. We're special all the way around, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so, no, I do not provide any tax strategy services.
No, I was just curious, because a lot of people, there's when they're researching starting a business, they always try to figure out, okay, how do I structure this to pay the fewest taxes out there? And I'm not qualified either. I just tell people our tax code favors starting a small business, especially if you're keeping your day job and doing at-home business, and it gives you a good tax strategy there. But a lot of people wonder, what do I do? An S corporation, do an LLC? And I'm like, okay, now you're getting above my head.
Yeah. And there are some other things to consider, though, with what type of corporation you set up. And that's on the insurance side. So if you have something that really has to protect your assets, your home assets, and you want, protection from that, an LLC is definitely the way to go in that respect. I knew that when I had my first company, it was a pet product that could put pets in danger. And what you do is you protect yourself from being sued and losing private assets, personal assets, by setting up the LLC. So I do know that part of it, just because I say to people, I'm a specialist. I'm not an expert in anything. I just have a lot of experience. For good or for bad, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of on-the-job experience on all of these topics.
Well, dive into that a little bit, because you've started several successful companies, and are those companies still up and running? Are those some things you sold off or still run? Tell us a little bit about those.
So my first company that I did start, I was able to turn that entire nightmare around. I created an international brand in 12 months, and in 3.5 years, I sold that company, allowing me to be very thoughtful about, okay, what do I do now? I don't want to work for corporate America. Where do I go? So I had built an HR company, creating resumes for people who were displaced in the pharma industry, because that was all crashing at that time, and that was where my background was. That's the industry I left. So I had created that. I had set up an agency, which I have right now. I have a very large agency that works with startups and turnarounds in that biotech industry. It's with any industry, but I'm brought in to either build their marketing department, turn around stale or old brands, do the complete startup strategy, that sort of thing. And 8 Simple Steps, that came as a COVID pivot. I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a teacher at the community college, and in entrepreneurship studies through, SCORE and the Small Business Administration. And when everything got shut down, they were like, what are we going to do? And I said, I'll take it online for you, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And it just kind of exploded a little bit. Like I had no intention of doing anything with this company. It was word of mouth. And then all of a sudden, word of mouth went from state to state to state. And now I have worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs internationally, even all the way to South Africa, New Zealand. Yeah. So, but it was a COVID pivot, like so many businesses.
Yeah.
I was not looking to start a 6th one. Trust me, I had done enough. Okay. I had enough of them. I wasn't looking for any more. So, yes. So all the other businesses I have sold, but I keep my agency, and I keep the one I'm most passionate about, which is 8 Simple Steps, because it's working with the entrepreneurs who are working at it every day. And if I can just get them where they need to be and not be one of the 20% that failed this year, that's my goal.
Awesome. Good stuff. So yeah, and you talked about COVID, because that's a lot of people started realizing, hey, I kind of like working from home. Maybe I should start a business, and maybe I'd rather be my own boss and not go back in the office and do that commute. So there's a lot of entrepreneurs born out of that period.
In fact, that's where I think a lot of that 21 million, or 5 million new businesses in 2021 came about. But I'm finding there's two different types I'm seeing here. One, the entrepreneur who wants control of their destiny, like you're talking about, Brian, who have made the decision, I'm not going back, great resignation, I'm going to do it myself. Then there's a second one that I see more than anybody. And that's the one who is 55, 60, 65, who's been displaced in their industry. And unfortunately, ageism has made an impact in their life where they can't get back. And they're struggling, and they're kicking and screaming with entrepreneurship as a last resort. And I'm trying to say to them, embrace this, not as a last resort, but as like the next chapter of something that could be great. So I find that I get a combination of both, but it's very different mindset for those really want to be there and those who have to be there.
Yeah. That's interesting too, because I think I've seen the same thing, but I just never really articulated that observation before. But I think I think you're absolutely right, because I'm thinking about some of the people that's reached out to me. A lot of them are retirement age and just looking for that next thing to do, whether out of necessity, or they're bored, and they're looking for significance. They've had success before, but now they're looking to do something significant. So a lot of them are just kind of looking for really doing something with their purpose rather than just earning a paycheck.
Absolutely. I think there comes a time in your life where mission and purpose and something bigger than what you were doing plays into it. And I really hope that gets balanced out with, even if you can't go back into the industry that you came from, say that's okay. There's a different door here. I'm going to knock on it and I'm going to walk through it. And I say to people, it's hard, it's scary, there's a ton of fear, and a lot of mistakes are made, but it can be avoidable. You've got people all around you who have walked the journey, all around you who have done it, made the mistakes, had success with it, and are willing to share and help you out with it.
Good stuff. So last thing for you, Maureen, is how can our audience get in touch with you, find out more about 8 Simple Steps?
You can go right to my website at 8simplesteps.net. There's a little bit more about my background story, what I do with entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, and what my true mission is. I'm also on Start and Stay in Business, which is my Facebook page. And you could also reach out to my company page on LinkedIn, which is 8 Simple Steps. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, our guest today has been Maureen Edwards. She's the founder of 8 Simple Steps, and she is there to help make this simple. That's what I love. I love making things simple, because it can be, we can overthink things and make it so complex, but she simplifies it for you. So thanks for being with us today, Maureen.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate you having me. And I always say, you don't need to know everything in business. You just need to know what works.
That's right. Great advice. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Good Life, Great Life, brought to you by Brian Highfield. We hope you enjoyed listening to this week's guests and stories. If you like what you've heard, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts.